Good afternoon, everyone. It is 5:31, January 7th, 2020. I want to welcome everyone for the first regular meeting of the City Manager Search Ad Hoc Committee for this year. I want to wish everyone a Happy New Year. And I'd like to begin by asking for a roll call and a declaration that we have a quorum.
Jerry Schwabel,
Present?
Jeff Twig,
Present.
Rafael Dueñas Sr.,
Present.
Elmo Lopez,
Present.
Ana Benavides Galo,
Present.
Juan Rodriguez,
Present.
Dean Belmares,
Present.
Trisha Cortez,
Present.
Hector J. Garcia.
Present.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, just welcome everyone. Happy New Year again. I do want to also welcome our newest member to our committee, Mr. Gene Belmares, who is taking the place of Dr. Garza. And want to welcome you, Mr. Belmares, to our committee. And also want to congratulate our committee member, Trisha Cortez, for being selected as Citizen of the Year. Is that correct? Congratulations, Ms. Cortez. So we're, so remind everybody, we have, as part of our meeting process, citizens are required to fill out any witness cards and submit them to the chairpersons no later than 5:45 today, the day of the meeting. They wish to speak. If they have comments, are going to be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Speakers may not pass their minutes to any other speaker. Comments should be relevant to the business that's at hand and delivered in a professional manner, and no derogatory remarks will be permitted. So I just want to remind everyone of that. We have a number of questions, a number of items that we want to have as for discussion purposes in our agenda today. Everybody should have gotten, as part of their packets, a complete today binder. They have a white binder that includes a ton of information. There's 185 pages that I saw we received, of which both of them is included in here. That includes all the relevant data of the candidates that have been submitted their resumes together with questionnaires. We plan to have some discussion in regards to the process. In addition to that, we're going to review the applicants, and we want this to make sure that we have some dialogue with staff and some discussion amongst the committee members as to how your feelings are, is how we go forward. Just as a matter of for recap, I personally attended 2 meetings before the year ended last year before City Council. Are you aware of what transpired at those meetings? Primarily, the major change from the last meeting that we had was to get a time period was extended, that we extend the time period for receipt of applications and resumes through the end of the year. We were not to interview anyone based on City Council's request until the end of the year. The end of the year came and gone, and we are here in the first meeting of the year, January 7th, where we now begin that process based on what we have received. So one of the things that I would like to do in this meeting is have some discussion about not only the process, but some recommendations, some ideas. We hope we could exchange and have dialogue based on your past experience that staff has had with other hires, and make sure that we understand clearly what our role will be in the next process. Would be to narrow down candidates and look at the qualifications and determine, whatever number of candidates we want to now bring in for an interview that we will conduct. So if you look at the items on the agenda, we have 4 items on the agenda, and the first one is the actual update of what we have in the binder. I want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to ask questions as to what they received. I will tell you that we have received, I looked at the instructions was, we were hoping that we would get these ranked. But I will tell you right now, some of us just returned from holiday vacations. I got back yesterday, and we received the information during the weekend. But I have reviewed, but I think there's more review that I'd like to do in regards to, even though we said that we wanted to rank them, it may be necessary for us to consider, if so the committee desires, to have a little bit more time, and I would be open to some of that. I'm not saying we're ready to do that right now, I just want to share with you some of my thoughts initially as to where we are. I would like to start off just by making sure, reminding everybody what's in the book, first of all. You have, not only do you have in your binder the full list that includes a recruitment bulletin, just as a reminder to everyone, in the tabs. You have the listing of the candidates that the search firm has submitted. And then you will go into the resumes and the questionnaires that have been submitted by each one of the candidates. As a reminder that each questionnaire, there were 24 questions, all received the same questionnaire, and all had the ability to respond in their own words, in addition to submitting a cover letter and submitting their resumes. So, having said that, I'll start off by opening it up for discussion. Is that I want to make sure that the 24 questions, Ms. Cabello, those questions were developed by staff or who developed the questionnaire?
The questions were developed based on Slaven coming in, talking to you all,
Okay.
ensuring and compiling them.
So Slavin, our consultants, developed the 24
Correct.
questions
Staff did
that
not.
everyone, okay, thank you, thank you.
So it was based on information.
Provided by you all.
Right. So I'm just trying to remind everyone, and I may be repetitive more for anything for the purpose of our newest member of our committee, Mr. Benitez. Even though I will tell you that I have met with Mr. Benitez and before, when he was appointed, try to bring him up to speed, but I want to make sure that there's any questions, you're free to ask him as well, Mr. Benitez, but I want to make sure that we don't leave any stone unturned if there's any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We do have in the list 10 individuals,
11.
11?
Candidates. One came
We have
in
11 now.
towards the very end.
Okay, so we have 11 individuals. There was one that was pending, a resume, that was included?
That is included, yes.
It's included in this book?
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
So for example, that would be a reason for me to look at it again. So we have 11 candidates, and I want to make sure that everybody received them before today's meeting, and I will tell you that, like I said, 185 pages, I don't want to be like, I don't sound political. Speaker Pelosi says, I guess we got to hire somebody before we read their resumes, We want to be able to make sure that we read everybody's,
And, Mr. Chair, I'd like to remind you that the closing of the applications were December 31st. As soon as we had a working day, we provided all those copies, did the weekend thing and said we had one more pending, and we submitted that pending item to you all yesterday. The last one, which is candidate number 8 on your tab. And so we worked, as soon as we were getting information for you, we did not hold back on any information that we would have been provided by the consultant.
And Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, the candidate application process is closed.
It's completely closed, as directed by council, December 31st.
so we're not receiving any more applications?
No, so we're not.
Right. Any other questions in regards to this particular, what you have before you in regards to the packet of information that allow us to help us make our
Chairman, it's just, I think the wait was a good wait. I think that we have a good group of individuals that have applied for city manager. I know we got them a couple of days ago. Went through it. We already did, well, some of us did. I know I did. We already ranked them and turned it in. So wherever you wanna steer us, let us know. But I think it's good, a lot of good information here. All right, yeah. If you haven't read it, but I think we need to set a time, whatever you're comfortable with, whatever everybody's comfortable with, so we get to the next stage.
I will tell the committee that I have been asked if, the next city council meeting is the 21st,
The 21st, that's correct.
huh?
That is correct.
So I was asked if we would be ready to submit recommendations at the next city council meeting. And I could not commit because not having had this meeting today and where we stood and where we're prepared, I could not commit.
I think the purpose of this meeting is to be able to rank, to see how many individuals you do want to interview, whether it's all 11 or do 6 of them or whatever the amount of candidates that you would like to interview. Then we'd go back out. We have a process that we can go more into detail, but however, we'd like to make sure that we have at least a good pool of candidates that you want to interview. We call the candidates in, whether it's through Skype or physical, depending on the dates that you do select. One of the things that we're here, and is another item, is getting all of you together in one room for a period of time. And so that's going to be an item coming up. Once you decide what date, then we'll schedule those interviews with a number of candidates that you all like. And based on that, we take it from there, 1 or 2 days or 1 full day, whatever that may be for you all. And then we come back, interview, you all do a short list. Based on that short list is what goes to council.
Okay.
And so it would be further than January 21st, I assure you that. Unless you all want to do it overnight tomorrow.
I'm not crazy about that. I'm not crazy about that.
Right.
I think it would not,
It's a
you know, we have to do it, give it the proper time and consideration.
Right.
You know, it's a big decision that we all
Yes.
have been charged with, and we want to give it the amount of time. I don't want to get into rushing into anything, and, you know, make a mistake of not, you know, not having that. I also want to make sure that, I think at some point, how can we have dialogue amongst ourselves? I don't know if in regards to when we review this whole process of discussion about the candidates, and what we may consider a strength or a weakness may not be considered by you a strength or a weakness. So at what point will we have, this is a question to staff, to have that dialogue and that distinction amongst ourselves?
Okay, so the basic qualifications have been met as far as per charter. The education, the experience is there. So the reason we gave you electronic and then a hard copy is for you all to decide where you feel candidates, who are the strongest candidates, and be able to rank them. Based on that, again, we come back with a number, and we have a second phase of it to where we have a process for interviewing. Based on that, then we'll have a ranking of who you want to be able to take up to council.
So the question is, not so much who we consider the strongest or the weakest, but who we want to consider bringing in for an interview. Is
Right,
that-
that's the first
Isn't
step.
that
That's the first
necessary
step.
for us to interview all candidates, or
No.
can we narrow the
That is
field?
totally up to the committee.
Okay.
Quick question for attorney. When my understanding is we can't sit here and talk about a candidate and a candidate. We need to, I think, I'm asking you, we evaluate them and then rank them, then turn it in. So there's no one, I know we're just saying, you know what, we want to talk about the candidate, but that's not allowed to do. Because when you're evaluating what you think is the top 6, not what the whole group then we're having a discussion, okay, I'm going to bring up so-and-so. Now everybody's going to talk about that. I don't think that that's the proper way of actually doing that.
And I know the intent was first to determine whether or not you wanted to interview all of them, and if you did, then the ranking's not necessary.
And that's
at
the
this
first
point.
question. Do you want to interview all of them, yes or no?
No.
What I said before, I'm sorry,
no.
Maybe
Mr. Chairman,
that-
just real quick, it's not so much the interview. I think the interview is very important once we get to those 6, 8, 11. But prior to that, to get that set of 6 or set of 8, that has to be individually and not as a
Correct.
group
And that's why we
talking
did-
about it.
Right, and
Once
that's
we
what we
make that
did.
decision, then we get to the next position is, now we need to bring them in and ask the question, and everybody to that particular person. I think
That's
that's,
we were asking for a ranking of some
Right.
sort.
Mr.
how-
Chairman,
whatever you
is
think.
it then our decision today to try to submit a ranking? Is that where we are
Yes, that's,
today?
that was our intent. We have the internal auditor here. So based on all your rankings, she'll rank here. We'll know who the top, whatever number you want to decide on interviewing is. We'll know who they are. We'll also do a drawing of who the first candidate would be, the second, third, and fourth, if that's what you wish to do, and only do 5 or 6, whatever number you decide.
I would personally like to just go with 6, interview the
maybe
top
you only
6
take
based on
vote
the
on
ranking that we've all come up
When I
with.
evaluated them, I did it up to 7. I didn't rank it after 7, just in case.
6 is,
Can you take a vote on that, so that we know
Well-
what direction we're taking?
Wait,
Well,
hold on.
the top 6
my only
interviews.
question or comment is,
You know,
what if your top 6 are different from my top 6?
And they will be.
And they will be, and then somebody that I think should have been interviewed doesn't fall in the top 6, I don't think that's fair. And I don't think that's fair to the public. And I really think there's only 10, and I really
11.
think, oh, well, now 11, as of yesterday, there were 10. And I really think that we should just do our due diligence and interview them all. We don't know them, you know, personally, I don't think. And sometimes people look better on paper than they interview. And I think you have to make a decision based on how they look, how their resumes look, but how they interview also. How are they going to interact with the public? What is their presentation? And you can't measure some things just by looking at a resume. That's just my opinion. There's not that many candidates.
Any other thoughts from any other committee
You're
members?
thinking of, if we're gonna do that, I don't have a problem with that, but you're talking about 11 candidates, minimum an hour and a half, of interview. You're
2 or 3
looking at
days.
a
2 or 3.
3 full
15-hour day.
days, 3 full days.
You can't do it in 2 days because questions get out, then it becomes an issue that, you know what? How did they find out the questions before? So it's not fair to the ones in the beginning to the ones at the end on stuff leaking out. I would say that maybe fit in the rankings, look at the list of the rankings, and then see, okay, if it's the top 6, the top 7.
I would want to take a poll of the rankings first
Right.
before we make
To the
that
poll of the
decision.
rankings, let's look at it and say, okay, you know what, I want the top 6, or I want the top 7.
We
only.
may all match.
Yeah, maybe they all match,
We may or we may.
and maybe not.
Yeah.
And then make our decision based on
On the
the
rankings.
ranking.
I agree.
Right.
Mr.
Because
Chairman, you may also wind up with 4 or 5 that we all agree on, and
Yeah.
just that one slot that's remaining open.
You cut 'em
At
off.
that point, we can make that decision whether to just keep the 5 that we all agree on, or vote to get to the 6th individual at that point. So I think
Agreed.
ranking is the first order of business, and then from there, we could determine which ones we want to.
Because I would want to
Move
see,
forward
yeah, somebody you think is very good, not going to be there, and you look at the ranking, he's not a part of, or she's not part of the ranking, then, you know what, I want to do 10, or I want to do 9. Just so you can see that strong candidates, because they're strong candidates, and they're a little weaker candidates, but still, in the top 7, they're very good candidates. At least, I thought they were pretty good candidates.
Yes.
Well, I was one of those that was vacationing and got home very late last night, so today, I'm not sure that I'm ready to rank them today, and that's my issue
And that's
today.
fine, that's what the chairman could maybe say, you know what, by Friday, like we did last
Yeah,
time.
that's why I say I want to have this discussion, because I agree with Mrs. Galo that we want to give this, proper time and consideration. I don't want to rush into anything. Now, what we've done in the past is that we did it, like you said the other day, last time, in regards to the search firm. We want to give it a certain period of time to get a chance to review and determine from that review, whatever number of days it is, it's proper, we all respond by that date. Would that be acceptable? That we would respond by that date, at least for purposes of determining the candidates? Because I also have a concern about, there are 10, they're 11,
Yeah.
I'm saying 10. There are 11 candidates, and quite frankly, there's some, I think there are some they're all qualified. They all have their unique features. I would hate to see us ignore someone in the rough there, a diamond in the rough there that we did get a chance to weed out. I know that our time is limited, but there may be somebody there. 11 is, it may be that even.
Mr. Chairman, I think what I'm hearing is if we've determined the ranking, and let's say out of this entire group, we've got the bottom 3 are very similar, then why would we even want to interview the bottom 3 if we all agree that the bottom 3 are bottom 3?
It could be. I just want to make sure that we're all understanding what we're
Yeah,
trying to
after
do.
we see the ranking, obviously, we need to compile the ranking, right?
But let's say that even, you know, even like you said, if you set yourself, you know, number 11, okay, does that mean that, you know, unless you say, I don't want to consider Mr. number 11 in my list at all, and for interview, but it may be, like you said, maybe on his list as
Yeah.
number 4 or 3. I think that's why.
After the ranking.
You'll know
After
more
the
after the
ranking, you
ranking
would know
on
that.
Yeah.
Well, what about considering an alternative? Why don't everybody just say, these are my 5 or 6 or 7 that I would like to interview? Because I think that we all are here to make our best decision, and why should someone that I want to interview may be at the bottom of all your lists? I don't know, I'm just saying maybe. I don't think it's fair that if I think someone should be interviewed and you all think, well, I don't think so, that they're not interviewed. That's what I'm saying. Maybe instead of ranking them, maybe we should just say, you know what, I think these 5 should be interviewed, I think these 4 should be interviewed, and whoever we all want interviewed gets interviewed, and it might not be all 11. You know, it might be 4, it might be 5, but I just would hate for one of us to think someone should be interviewed, and because they didn't rank, they don't get interviewed. I don't know, I just feel there's an unfairness.
Can I ask you a question? Would the committee be more comfortable saying, you know what, it's the same thing, you know what, we submitted 7 or 6. These are the 6 that I want to see
Interview.
interviewed. And you make your 6, and they can total those up, and regardless of what you turned in, those are the 6 that we're going to interview.
Or those are the individuals.
Those are the individuals we're
Not
going
the
to
6,
interview.
But all of the individuals.
Right.
It might turn out to
If
be 9
it's
individuals.
my 6,
Well,
if
that's-
you have
that's
2 years
reasonable.
that are my 6, but those 2 are still in there because they were still recommended.
Yes, exactly, that's my point, you know, so we
I don't
might
have-
just interview 6, we might interview 8. I mean, we might not interview all 11, but,
Unless we rank them, we'll never know. We need to at least get the ranking done.
well, I.
Individual.
Would the committee, you know, consider the following? Let's say we rank them, we extend the period for listing them in our levels of preferences. And if we find that within all the rankings, okay, that we have there, that a limited number, you know, we would know, hey, the bottom 2, the bottom 3 are these, okay? And we're all in agreement that, hey, turns out that everybody agreed that these 3 then we say, then we will not consider bringing them in for the interview. Is that something that you would?
That'll solve everybody, because if it's not on there, then we don't interview.
I mean, because we won't like it, like Mr. Lopez saying, or I don't know, Mr. Williams saying, or, you know, that we won't know until we actually, you know, but at least we know we're gonna have more time to review them. You know, I too want more time to, especially have the questionnaires that I review very thoroughly, and the resumes, and I've got my own, you know, pet peeves or process as well. And if it's in my group of the 11, these are my top 8. I wouldn't even think of this other ones. Nothing says I said. But they coincide with the consensus.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask everyone individually, what number would you like to interview on those that have had a chance? You haven't had a chance to really look at it thoroughly.
Yeah.
But like, I don't need to interview any more than 6 personally, but, you know, maybe 7, but if that would be good for me. Now, if your list is different from my list and you want to interview your different 6, well, you might have a 7 or 8 on my list or whatever, that person would be interviewed. That's what everybody's saying. We're going to interview a certain number of your top, you know, but we've got to do some due diligence on the front side to narrow that down. Now, if you want to see your top 6 interviewed, I think that's a good way to start. I'm good with that.
I think it's, to me, I would, if right now, I would bring all 11 candidates for interviews, okay? Now, the only way that would change is that if I would rank them, and all would rank them, and we all determine that, hey, these individuals here, and, you know, I think we have to make some consideration. This is not something we're going to consider at all, from our standpoint, based on what we want as well. I don't know if that's proper or not, but just for purposes of us reaching a consensus of what number that is, whether it's 6 or it's 8 or it's 11, you know? I just just don't want to miss that
I
opportunity.
agree with you. I agree with 6 too. But that if it's not on there, and when we do the actual ranking, that we bring that 7th person in, or that 8th person, to make sure that everybody makes sure that whoever you thought should be up there in the top 6 are part of that
Or
group.
part of the interview.
That way there's no,
Mr. Reyes, any thoughts?
nobody can say, I
You've been-
didn't see that.
You've been listening here, you know.
No, yo creo que está bien lo que están diciendo Tito y Jeff. Yo estoy de acuerdo.
And limiting the number
Pero
of,
eliminarlo, sí, porque no sé que venga gente que nada más está gastando su tiempo. Y también va a ser muy largo el tiempo. Si nosotros hacemos ese ranking del 1 al 6, eso es suficiente. Ahora, pues está un poco difícil que 9 gentes coincidan. Entonces, si el ranking coincide, es porque tenemos un perfil en la cabeza de lo que queremos.
right. I just want to make sure that, you know, because once we get to the interview phase, you're down to 6, you eliminate 5 on the interview, you're down to 1, and you didn't interview the others, the opportunities. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but those are things that take into consideration. I want to open it up. I want to have this discussion because I just want to be, you know, get into a point and say, well, this guy was not considered at all because.
Well, if he's on your top 6 list, he would get interviewed, no matter what.
Correct.
So we might have 9 people to interview, but
Ay, perdón, al final del día vamos a eliminar a 10.
Yeah, that's about it.
Nada más hay lugar
Mr.
para
Chairman, just
uno.
the reality of interviewing 11 people, once again, if we have to give them an hour and a half, 2 hours each, are we as a committee prepared to be here 2-3 days? I just need to clarify that. I am, but
Well,
is everybody?
I think we should. I think that's why we were called to this position, and I think that's why we were chosen by our respective council members, mayor, because they felt that we did have the time and that we were going to put the full commitment, because there are a lot of people that want to be sitting up here. Let me tell you, there are a lot of people that want to be here making this decision, vetting these people that are very concerned about who's going to be our next city manager. And so if we can't take 2 days out of our schedule somehow, I mean, we need to reevaluate why we're here, I think.
Ms. Cortez, you've been
I
silent as
totally-
well. I'd
I
like to hear
totally-
from Ms. Cortez. Can I just hear from Ms. Cortez?
Well, I think, first of all, I think it would have been helpful if we had gotten, because there's 6 new people from when we last met in October, and it takes a good chunk of time to go through each person's packet. The questionnaires, you know, some answer very thoroughly with a lot of depth. And, you know, I look up everybody online too to try to get a feel for what's going on with them in their communities. And so I think it was a lot to process, you know, getting this a few days ago. Maybe if we had gotten resumes, you know, as they came in, as they qualified, I think we would have been able to spend a little more time. So it did feel a little bit rushed to go through everything the last just few days and to try to rank everybody. But, you know, you know, and just my opinion, I think there are 6 or 7 that really would, we could really benefit from bringing here and listening to them and spending good amount of time with them. I understand what Mrs. Galo is saying about some people maybe don't shine as brilliantly as they are on paper, and we should give them a chance. But I do think that there were a few candidates that just aren't in that top tier as far as like their level of expertise and with managing municipalities and budgets and employees and dealing with crises and dealing with the many complicated issues of running a city. So I do think that we could do some pairing of them, whether it's 6 or the top 8. I would be prepared to do that.
Mr. Rodriguez, thoughts?
Yeah, I'd like to comment first. It is a lot of material. And previously, I think we all had read the ones that had already come in. But in the future, I would ask that for something so important that printouts be made so that we can highlight, so that we can make notes, Because when you're reading them online, I mean, you can read, and all of a sudden, they're all running in together. Whereas if you have them all printed out individually, you can establish your own system of saying, you know what? I'm looking for integrity, I'm looking for leadership, I'm looking for a person who's a good listener, I'm looking for this and this, and you can, on those, different resumes, make your comments, make your notes and everything. It's a lot of pages to print at home, 150, 160 pages, so I would just ask that,
We're trying to be environmentally safe, sir.
I'm
We're
sorry?
trying to be environmentally safe for one.
Oh.
So once we got all of them together,
No.
which was Monday, we got, again, we reiterate, we got everything. As soon as we got everything, we sent everything to you. And so you're getting it as fast as we are, maybe a day behind.
But I
And again, we closed December 31st. We got it from the consultants at that point.
Yeah.
We're sending it to you all.
Sure. The environmental thing on something so important and everything, I don't buy that.
Hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Wait, no,
Take
listen.
that back.
No, I mean, I'm serious.
But nothing precludes you from.
We're picking up,
I think
we're picking a city
we're,
let me finish. We're picking a city manager,
correct.
where we're given a responsibility.
Yes.
Part of our responsibility is to share our thoughts, and that's what I'm doing. But to say we're trying to save, my goodness gracious, this person is going to lead our city. And to say, well, we didn't want to print it because we want to save a
No,
tree.
No, we're not saying
Not
that.
right now.
We're being transparent, so we're providing you the information. As I recall, maybe one of the first meetings, you all elected for it to come electronically to you all. So we went that extra step and provided a printed copy.
We voted on that.
You all voted on that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you know what,
Mr. Chairman.
you could make copies.
Yeah.
You made copies
Well, you
before.
probably made them at your place of work.
Yeah, I did.
I'm retired,
You're
so
retired.
I
I didn't think about that.
I would have wasted two ink cartridges, about $80 worth of ink. But anyway, call
Or
me
if you
Mr.
would
Scrooge or
call,
whatever,
we'll
but
provide the copies to
Jerry
you.
will reimburse you for
Yeah.
that, Mr. Chauvin.
Right.
I'm just trying to, like I said, share my thoughts that
And that's what we're trying to,
something this
But also,
important.
public is listening, and they're hearing the city's not doing a good job, and that's what I do not want for the public to hear.
I think the information that y'all provided was very good information, and those of you that, are out of town, there's nothing they can do about that, but we that were here in town, didn't leave anywhere, we were able to print it, because we have printers to do that, and we're able to go back to the note from the last meeting to the one in this one, and put something together.
Well, anyway, that being said, regarding the number of people to interview, everybody has made some really good comments. And if we could all blend it together and, come up with something, it'd be great. An option is to focus on 6, and then 7 and 8, depending on if they get more than 50% of 9 votes, well, then we consider 7, and if another person gets 50%, we consider 8. Anything after that, my goodness gracious, we were charged with a big responsibility. We all have knowledge of what, from different areas of what this city needs. I think we're all looking for, hopefully first and foremost, integrity. We're looking for leadership skills. We're looking for experience. We're looking for, a good listener. We're looking for somebody that understands what our needs are and has experienced some of that so they can apply it. I don't know that number 10 and 11 need to be looked at, or even number 10 or number 9. And again, I'm just saying because the time constraints. Will we all be able to get together? I'm retired. I can tell you, yes. If it takes 3 days and I've got to be there 9 hours, no problem. But I'm trying to be considerate of those of you that are still working. It's a lot of time to devote to this. It's a big responsibility, but we have to, be understanding of each of our sets of circumstances. So that's just an option. Go with 6, and if anybody else gets more than 50%, throw them in there. Because out in the real world, companies, they get resumes and they'll go through them. They don't interview, 347 people. You just couldn't do it. I don't think the hospital does it. I don't think the bank does it. Some business practices do apply in government settings, and I think this is one that If the majority of us identify 2 or 3 of them that should not be considered, there's a pretty good reason. You know, if we were just going to go with 2, then I'd really be worried, or 3 or 4, but we're saying 5, 6, 7, possibly 8. You know, so anyway, that's.
So just, try to wrap up this issue here. Would we, let's extend the period of a ranking to, what time, when? You want to do it by this Friday, you want to do it by next week? You know, I need to ask that question first of all. Whatever date that is, and we submit the rankings on the 11, on those. If we find that there's a consensus of the bottom, whatever number that is, 2, 3, 4, 5, is that something we would consider? And then again, there kind of come other questions as to when the process of what we're gonna have some discussion, what we're gonna do then, with these individuals. Is that something, Ms. Gallo, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I would like, until next week sometime, like I said, I just got back, I just opened it last night. I would like to take my time going through the new ones. I just, I'm ready to, I think we can all find dates that we're all available if you want to start setting dates for, what you think will be 6 or 7. But I still feel strongly if any one of us up here thinks somebody should be interviewed, then they should be interviewed,
Right.
even if they don't meet 50%.
Sure.
I just feel that, we're all representing a council member, you're representing the mayor. So I think our council members put us here because they have a lot of, trust in us. And if we, for some reason, feel someone should be interviewed, I think they should be interviewed regardless of if, and no offense, and I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but I've been in situations where it happens, where someone is excluded for whatever reason that should have been interviewed, and I just don't want that to happen here.
And I personally, I think, I totally agree with you.
Okay, so can we target, let's say, a week from today, say next Wednesday,
That's fine.
to submit to staff those rankings, and let's see what the results of that will be. Based on that, that will determine, where we go from that, what number that looks like.
January 15th.
Correct,
Good?
correct. All right, is that acceptable, Todd?
Real quick, on the motion, whatever, are we ranking, well, we haven't made a decision, are we ranking from 1 to 6? Or are we ranking from 1 to 11? Or are we ranking from 1 to 7?
I'm ranking from 1 to 11, and I'm, and I'm looking at, if we all, let's say we all determine, nine of us determine, hey, these bottom 2, these bottom 3, we're all in agreement that, or we end up with top 8, let's see where we are with those, and we may end up in the interview process that once you interview them, none of these guys are, then we have to come back to city council, we may have to open it up for more candidates, in that boat,
Mr. Chairman, do we use the same ranking sheet that we were given?
Yeah, so I hadn't seen
And
it.
do we put our name on it, or no name, or?
I don't have a problem either way. Does anybody have a problem with that?
And does anybody have it read?
Does anybody have a problem with that? I don't have a problem with putting my name on anything.
I mean, I guess legal, should we
Should we
put our name,
on
should
it?
we not? Are we required to? Are we?
You're not required to, but it may be a good idea just so that we can have to be efficient and make sure everybody's put in. I'm sorry?
Is that acceptable to
No,
all?
there's no issue with open records. I mean, there's no
Okay.
issue.
And if we have them ready, Mr. Chairman, do we turn them in, or do we wait
Yeah,
till?
if you have it ready, turn them in right now. If you feel comfortable doing it, you might as well turn it in. Okay? Any further discussion on that issue? Okay?
You want to put that in a motion, Mr. Chairman?
I think basically the instructions are just to go ahead and submit,
Just to clarify the ranking, we're
Yes, the
ranking
ranking,
from
how many? 1 through
10,
6, 1 through
1
7, 1 through 11?
1 through 11.
11.
1 through 11.
and 1 being the highest ranked, 1,
Yeah.
2, and so on. Okay, just to clarify.
But frankly, what I'm gonna do is that, I wanna rank those that I wanna interview. It doesn't matter if 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, that's just me. I just wanna bring in and determine who I wanna bring in for the interview.
Mr. Chair, just for point of order.
Because like I said, that is just a point of what's on paper versus what.
Yeah.
Point of orders. City Attorney, do we need this in the form of a motion?
Yes, that's on the agenda.
You do need it in the form of a motion?
Yes.
Okay.
So then the motion would be that that the committee rank all applicants from 1 to 11, 1 being the highest,
And submit,
and submit those by Wednesday, no later than
January
Wednesday,
the
5 o'clock?
That's fine.
That's so moved.
Second.
A second, Mr. Lopez, second. Any discussion? Okay. There be no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Ayes have it. All right, now, let's get into the nitty-gritty. Now comes some discussion. I want to have some discussion in regards to the process of the interviews, and this is something I really need staff to guide us on this. The question that I would have, when we bring these individuals for the interviews, and I know you've given us you shared with us some housekeeping deals here, where the process that you're recommending, this is your recommendation, right?
That's correct.
Your recommendation is for the candidates to come in and speak for 20 minutes, make a 20-minute presentation, right?
correct,
And then allow for a 55-minute Q&A by committee members,
correct,
okay? Now, we have 9 committee members,
correct.
okay? In addition to that, in the second page of that handout, actually, we're going over procedures. One is a presentation that they will make covering specific topics, and these are all topics I think that have come out of our discussions in the process of identifying the candidates, the other topics areas that are included, many of which are also included in the questionnaire. And then the time element of procedure number 2, there's a procedure number 3 where we allow them to not interrupt their presentations. But then procedure number 4, that committee members shall select a category from the above that are listed here to prepare their questions for the candidate. Questions must be legal, non-leading, and unbiased. This is recommendation. Questions should be limited to 2 questions to ensure that all committee members have the opportunity to ask their
Mr. Chairman,
questions.
I'm not comfortable with limiting to 2 questions.
Okay, so because we have a timing issue, unless you want to say, I'm going to interview each candidate for 2 hours or 3 hours, the way we wanted to do is wanted to have a structured process. Have them come in and give a presentation for about 20, 25 minutes, whatever that amount would be. Then you each individually would have one question, whether it's, for example, you might have a community health question, and you will always ask that consistent question to all our candidates on that health question. Maybe the other one would be economic development, another one would be environmental, so on and so forth, transportation. And so you all would have that 1 or 2 questions related to your area of what you would like to speak about. We don't want to disclose any questions. We do have a list of questions that we can provide to you, but in order for fairness for all candidates, we did not want to talk about which questions to ask, but for you individually to be able to have that 1 or 2 questions after their process of being able to explain for the 20 minutes, if that has not been resolved, or, if you have additional questions. But we'd like to limit it to about an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and 30 minutes at the very most. If you all say, no, I want to interview him for 2 hours, and that's fine with us too. We don't have a problem with that. We're just trying to ensure that we have a consistent method.
Mr. Chairman, I see the time limitation being very, very fair, very necessary, but the limiting to 2 questions, I'm not sure. I can see where you might designate a category that I may want to at least ask 1 question
Right.
in, but I'd like to ask 2 or 3 questions or 4 questions. I'd like to be free to do that. Certainly, Mr. Chairman, you have the right to say, okay, that's enough, Mr. Lopez. But other than that, I think we need to be forthright and open to ask the questions that we need to, with common sense limitation in general.
Right,
I'm not sure we can be here with 1 candidate for 5 hours. But certainly, I'd like to ask. I can ask my industry question if you want to say that, because I've seen that done before.
Right.
And then after that, if I feel there's a follow-up question or,
Linked to that specific question, yes. But if you say one thing and then come up with a totally different question for the same candidate, that's fine. But every candidate needs to be asked those same specific questions in order to be fair.
Say that again? Every candidate, so,
Well-
if I'm interviewing someone right now, and in his presentation, I noticed something, you know, that stood out that was, I had not read over here, that I cannot ask a question, you know, to deviate from my, in other words, he said one thing, I found that interesting, well, what about, can I
If
ask
it
another
relates to
question?
that question, yes. If it relates to that specific question that you're asking, yes. Yeah.
I find that very limiting, quite frankly. I find
You
that
can
very
ask.
limiting.
The only problem I see is if there's a candidate there that you want him to shine more, you're going to ask questions that you already know he knows, or he's going to be able to really wine and dine. I think the questions have.
There is no committee member who's going to allow that.
You
to
never,
happen.
you know, but the problem with this one is there's a local person running,
Uh-huh.
as part of it. So it's very,
There's
to
a
be,
couple- there's a couple-
to be,
there's a couple
to be
of them.
transparent as possible. I don't think that we need to have a list anywhere, because if that, say, well, you know what, here, that person or those people already had the questions that we're gonna ask. Or are we going to ask questions that we know that that's the problem with that. We gotta be consistent, because you got 20 minutes to talk about it, and we all have I think we should all have a question, and I wanna hear the answer from every candidate on that same question. If it has to do with environment, it has to do with whatever, so we have that. Now, at the end, you might wanna take it another notch and say, you know what, once we brought the 8 or 10 down to 6, down to whatever the council wants us to send, maybe they want us to send 3 or 4, then maybe bring those 4 to do exactly what you wanna do. You know what, now explain this to me, and we can bring them all.
Yeah,
I just think it's to be fair, because the other way, any other way, we're not gonna be fair, in my opinion.
And it's gonna be, we all need to be cognizant that there's not a perfect question, there may be some, you know, there's a couple of questions there that, to me, are leading questions that only people that lived here would know that.
Oh, I don't think
That puts a candidate from outside of Laredo that doesn't know, and you're asking him to answer, asking him or her to answer this question where they have no knowledge about, you know, what that means, you know.
Yeah, totally agree. I'm not looking at their question. I'm saying, you know, if you ask me, you know, you ask them a question on
Downtown
trade.
San Agustin,
Or
San
you
Agustin.
have yeah, that, you're not gonna ask those kind of questions. You're gonna ask something that, you know what, everybody should know. What's your plan on transportation? What's your plan on water, on getting our water to where it needs to be? Those are things that everybody should have an answer to. Now, you wouldn't say, oh, what do you think about the streets? No, that's not a good question, because the only one question you might have, why would you throw it away?
Ms. Cortez?
I'm wondering, are we going to have an opportunity to develop questions for our committee, right?
Well,
And-
that's what we're discussing right now. What is it that we're gonna be able to do to the, you know, 'cause they're making a recommendation of 2 questions based on the limitation of time,
I
okay?
think, I think that we should be able, as a committee, like, be able to, with each other, probably it can't be done in open session because we don't want to give out the questions in advance, but maybe we have to come up and review the basket of questions that we have, and I'm sure some of us are going to have the same question, and then come up with like a number. I understand where, you know, everybody has to kind of be asked the same question to not, to be fair to all, but we're dealing with human beings that are also very different and have had.
Diverse resumes.
Yes, and so somehow within the questions, that has to be able to come out, you know. So, I don't know, I'm hoping that we have a chance to throw in the hat our list of, I don't know, 3 to 5 pressing questions maybe, or something, and then we kind of try to see how many are the same, and then how many are kind of legitimate standalone questions that we
So
can
you
all.
would like to come up with your set of questions, whichever one that may be,
Right.
to submit it into the pool of questions.
Yeah.
And so, any other thoughts on this side?
Yo, perdón, no estoy muy convencido de que 20 minutos sean suficientes. A mí sí me gustaría escucharlos más tiempo, no presionarlos, porque estamos aquí para buscar una persona adecuada, no para ver quién gana un concurso, sino para buscar la persona adecuada. Y también creo que en la medida en que mis compañeros tengan más preguntas, nos ayuda a conocer más a las personas. Tampoco estoy muy conforme con 2 preguntas. Si el participante, el candidato, su respuesta nos trae más dudas, ya no podríamos preguntarle más, o su respuesta no fue muy clara. Entonces,
Sí
tampoco
podemos
creo...
preguntar, si es tocante de esa pregunta
Al
que les
mismo-
preguntó,
al mismo
sí
tema.
puede, por esa, de
Me
esa
gustaría que se
pregunta.
pusiera eso más claro, Miss Cabello. Se me hace que 2 preguntas es... Lo
Es
que
que-
queremos es conocerlos.
Mínimo tenemos 9
Sí,
commissioners,
9
9.
cabezas.
Si cada quien
9 sillas.
toma una pregunta, por ejemplo, una pregunta de 5 minutos se va a tardar, por ejemplo, de responder.
Ujú.
Son 50 minutos, casi la hora.
Miss Cabello, no se moleste conmigo.
No se moleste.
Llevamos un año.
Ok.
No podemos esperar 2 horas, 3
Perfecto,
horas,
entonces.
5 horas. No pasa nada. Me gustaría más conocer más a los candidatos que ponerles un tiempo o ponerles una presión. Y insisto, no creo que vengan aquí a ganar un premio, un torneo. Vienen a presentarse y nosotros tenemos que recomendar las personas más indicadas a desempeñar el trabajo. Y mientras mejor los conozcamos, creo que podemos tomar una mejor decisión en la recomendación. Entonces, mi opinión es un poquito más amplios los tiempos y no presionarnos, no llevamos presión.
And Mr. Chairman, you're the control there, by the way.
I'll say what?
You're the control.
I understand, and that's why I think I'm trying to hear your thoughts, Mr. Reyes is saying he would like to give more time for a presentation of the candidate, so we get to know them a little more from their point of view, of their perspective, presenting themselves, versus limiting to 20, open it up to a little bit more time. And that maybe that would even, limit the number of questions that may be asked based on that presentation. I'd like that. I personally, would welcome,
Chairman.
welcome an opportunity to, the more we know where these candidates are coming from, some may be better than others, but to me, this is a critical decision that we gotta make.
Mr. Chairman,
I
it's a
would
good
welcome
idea
that.
if that's what you want to do as far as opening up the presentation process of it. What I'd like to see a cap on is the total hours per candidate. So if you want to go from 1 hour to 2 hours, let everyone have the benefit of 2 hours. But you can't do 2 hours on one, 30 minutes on another, 60 minutes, whatever it is, and then that way it'll help us schedule each candidate coming in, and we can look very professional saying, okay, yours is at 8, yours is at 10, yours is at 1 o'clock, whatever it is. So whatever it is, time that you all decide, let it be consistent with all candidates.
And I'd like to comment, I like the idea that Mr. Lennis came up with about, obviously, the more time you give them for a presentation, they themselves may answer some of the questions that we're going to have. So if someone's presentation is short or shorter, then it's going to call for quite a few more questions. If their presentation is very thorough and they explain everything completely, we may have less questions. So if it is an hour and 45 minutes or a 2-hour period, then their presentation is going to determine, the length of it and how thorough it is going to determine, how many questions we get a chance to ask. So I think it's a win-win situation. If we give them more time, they cover more about themselves and their skills. If they finish quicker, then we have an opportunity to pick their
They may
brain.
not take all the time.
Right,
all the period of
right.
time. They may take less.
Right, right. And then, one other thing I wanted to say, I like what Mr. Garcia commented that, okay, we've kind of determined that the first phase is going to possibly 6, 7, or 8 candidates, something like that. But I think we need to know what is step 2. Are we going to go narrow it down to 3 candidates, or will it be narrowed down to 3 candidates? Because I think that'll put a lot of us at ease as far as having an opportunity to ask additional questions. If we know that, from the 8 it's going to go to 3, or from the 8 it's going to go to 4 final interviews, and then the council's going to pick somebody, I think that puts us a little more at ease as far as, we're going to have a second chance to ask additional questions.
So let me ask a question of staff. In the past, when a list of candidates has been narrowed down to what we're basically, we're saying some of these, I don't know, whatever you want to call them, finalists or semifinalists, and you're down to, so maybe 2 or 3. Have we done a second interview?
If you wish to do a second interview, you may,
It's up to us. We can do so.
as long as we take a short list to council.
Well, let's say, let's, just for purposes of exercise, we do these 6, right? We go through the whole interview of the 6, right? And we end up, let's say, hey, out of these 6, we've got 2 real strong candidates here, maybe 3 strong candidates, but we still have some more questions we want to bring them in for a final,
Okay,
deal.
so your purpose is to short
That's
list.
my question.
Right, let me read you the motion that was made by
That's what I
Councilor
was
Reyes.
asking about.
Motion to direct the city manager's search ad hoc committee to commence candidate interviews after the closing date of December 31st. We've done. And to continue reviewing resumes and giving Slavin direction regarding background checks, and to direct Slavin to continue their recruitment. I'm sorry, their recruitment.
Sure.
Until I got a call and I had to close it. Work, and to use the same scorecards and grading criteria among council and the committee during the interview process as amended. So they're asking us to do grading cards and grading criteria, scorecards and grading criteria.
Well, I'll be honest with you, if we did everything by scorecards, what do we can do it in the mail for that matter.
Right.
We need to have some, to me, the interviews are the most critical elements of the process, okay? That's what we're going to determine, the candidates.
There's
It ain't going to be on a piece of paper, it ain't going to be on a scorecard, in my opinion. So, I personally, that's not the way I would choose to do it. That's why I want to make sure that we as a committee also have a say in this process of what we want to do.
Right, but just quick question is what the council is asking for is what we are instructed to do. Not instructed to do what we want, but instructed what they're asking us to perform. That's the way the charter has it too. It's not that's coming from them telling them, this is the way I want to present it to us.
Well,
If we agree or disagree, but it's still in our charter.
yeah.
We need to not
Yeah, but-
recreate the charter.
If I may ask staff a question again. So the motion made at council and accepted by council was for us to create a criteria, a scorecard that we were going to use in dual path. That is, we use that same scorecard that they're going to use for their selection of what?
The finalists.
The finalists. So we're also tasked somewhere in an ordinance or in a motion to bring forward finalists?
That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah,
So, in other words, for my clarification, say we interview 6, 7, then we have the finalists that they said we have to use this particular scorecard. Who's developing that scorecard? Are we developing it? Is council developing it? Do they have to bless our scorecard if we develop it? How does that?
We had a general scorecard that we would want to provide to you as far as that is concerned. That is why the initial part was you rank them. Then based on that, we would come up with the questions that we have and say, these are the strong areas in, for example, your criteria, your transportation, your health, you rank from 1 to 5, whatever those are, these criteria that we had for you. And then based on that, you get your top 3 or 4.
Sure, but was that not our task to develop that scorecard?
Well, this is a guideline that we
Oh,
provide
guideline.
to
So
you.
you're just going to provide us a guideline,
Right,
not
and
necessarily
you all
the
need to
scorecard
decide.
we're going to use.
Right.
Okay.
yeah, I'm not questioning staff, quite frankly. The only thing I took away from the city council meeting was setting the date, because we have, I know we have committee members at present, discussion about scorecards and what we're going to submit. I mean,
And
I
Mr.
may not have
Trouble,
been totally, present, in mind, but I don't really recall, and I'll say, are we limiting ourselves more as a result of the last discussion at the city council meeting or not?
This is,
That's my question.
What's the question?
You can read, I understand what you read, but if you're telling me right now,
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I think that the scorecard was only to score the top 3 or 4 that we want to send, not everyone that we're going to interview. The scorecard was not for interviewing purposes, excuse me. It was for, once we conduct the interviews of the 7 or 8, and we narrow it down to 3 or 4, then we go back and use that scorecard. I guess,
to them.
and give it to them. But I guess my question is, say we get down to those 3 or 4, and we want to re-interview them so that we can better score them on the scorecard, can we do that? You know.
You can come back. The question-
let me just reread this, just for purposes of clarity. I want to be sure everybody's clear on what the motion was, because I think it's important that we all thoroughly understand. The motion to direct the city manager search ad hoc committee to commence candidate interviews after the closing date of December 31st, 2019, and to continue reviewing resumes and giving Slavin direction regarding background checks, and to direct Slavin to continue their recruitment work and to use the same scorecards and grading criteria among council and committee during the interview process as amended. It's kind of like, I'm a little bit confused here. On the one hand, saying, we're closing the date as of December 31st, then we're also saying Slavin to continue recruitment work.
The recruitment work before the 31st. Because remember, you came in before the 31st, we were saying continue it to the
Okay,
31st.
so the recruitment work is to December 31st?
Right,
yes.
Not beyond December 31st?
No.
Yes, no.
Can we then clarify, Mr. Chairman, what are instructions once we do the interview? What's the last process before we send a list of candidates to city council? Because that's our major
You
goal here,
interview
right?
and you score them. Based on your scoring, you provide the top X number to council.
Yeah. Now reading this, we have to score each one during
Yes,
the
we do.
interview
And that's what we were
process.
trying to
I'm sorry.
guide you to.
Based on
I
your
misunderstood.
criteria for questions, et cetera. So there is a process. Are we
There is a.
good with this?
Yeah, it seems to me that we're reviewing this. it seems to me that-
This last part of it is really takes us to the 31st of December.
Yes.
And then, to clarify, we have interviews set up with however many candidates qualify,
Right.
and then we score them, and we send the top X to
Right.
council, and then our job is done.
Correct.
All right. And it may take one meeting of interviews or another round of interviews after that if we're still in doubt. Is that?
That is correct. If you have further questions that you still need clarification on, we can certainly bring them again for a second,
Okay.
before you provide your finalists
That's-
to council.
That's clear. Is that clear? Okay.
So did we ever get clarification whether the council members were going to participate in the interviews with us?
They were not.
They were not.
They were not?
No.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
They will do they will conduct their own, or maybe not. I don't know what their process will be.
Okay.
But they're not sitting here with you for that process. That is your role.
All right, all right. And,
Chairman, real quick, and ask you a question. I know we're talking about a timeline, and you know what, the interviews, give it an hour and a half, and I think you're right. You know what, we need to get as much information as we can. But that's gonna be based on, are we interviewing 6 or are we interviewing 11? Because if we interview 11 at an hour, 20 minutes, which is, I don't think enough, we're looking at 16 hours of interviews, which is fine. That's an all-day thing. I know we said separate them to 2 days or 3 days, but when you do that, if any questions or we're asking get out, then you know what, it's not fair to everybody else. That's my concern. When you go to 6 candidates or 5 candidates, now you're cutting 7.5 hours. Now you can go to an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes because there's less candidates and you spend more time with those to get what you want, what we want to get out of them. So that's just my concern on that. So until you actually make a decision on, we're only gonna interview 6. Then we can say, you know what, we're 6, 2 hours each, 12 hours, you know what, we're okay with that. So it depends. We're gonna 7, well, an hour and 45 minutes. How do we break it down? Because I don't think 20 minutes to explain yourself for a city like this is enough. I think they need a little more time. So it's gonna be determined on how many people we're gonna interview, so we can break that down.
Well, then that being said, why don't we meet next week after we score and then decide, instead of waiting such a
We will
long
need
time?
an additional meeting before the interviews.
Yes,
This is what it sounds
let's do
like,
an
yes.
additional meeting before the interviewing process, and then maybe we are all on board for 6, and then we can make those determinations on how long they're gonna last, and we can be thinking about this. Do we want to ask one question, 2 questions?
Mr. Chairman,
You know.
to Committee Member Gable's point, and we skipped over C and setting a date for the selection for interview.
That's very important.
So
The
if
dates.
we
Kinda goes hand in hand, goes
Yeah,
hand in hand.
almost hand in hand, exactly. So why not have another meeting, go through the rankings, and then set up a date for interviews, and then we'll know exactly how much time
Yeah.
and what other ground rules we need to set up for them at that point.
Yeah, I personally would feel comfortable with that. Ms. Cortez?
Would that be the time at which we would start looking at questions and crafting or
We
reviewing
could.
questions?
We do that as well.
We could do that. Mr. Chair, just for a point of clarification, is there a point in time where we might need to avail ourselves of executive session to create these questions so they're not out in the public just yet while we prepare for this?
That process should be done openly, and then doing that, of course, would subject you to open records. So really, the exception for executive session is interviewing and
The interview itself.
related to a specific individual as opposed to procedural.
So the development of the questions for the interview could be done in executive session?
No,
No.
No,
you have to be publicly open.
be open.
That's why I think it's a good idea for us or the chairman to assign, you know what, everybody has an expertise on something. Let them create those questions so that, you know what, you don't know what I'm gonna ask, she doesn't know what I'm gonna ask. And you know what, the candidate there doesn't know, nobody knows what they're gonna
Nobody knows what
ask
they're gonna
until
ask.
that particular day. So it's as transparent as we can for the public.
I like that, I like that.
But I also just want to make sure we don't get boxed into, the issues that we are most familiar with. We probably have also
Yeah.
other questions that
That's fine.
we care deeply about and want to be able to throw that into the hat to potentially get on the question list.
And I think when we get to the point that it's 6 candidates that we do that maybe one question based on your expertise and another question based on what you want to know. And those turn it into the chair and only him knows, so he can give, okay, this is a repeat, change your question, so only that one person knows what that question's going to be. This doesn't matter to me.
Do we,
I'm sorry.
Any other thoughts? This end over here?
Mr. Schwartz?
Concur? Concur?
So,
Yes?
so that we're prepared for the next meeting where we're going to look at our ranking and come to a consensus of who we're going to interview, should we already start the process of submitting our top questions to you? Just to think.
I'd rather get them all together, rather than piecemealing it, at least from the standpoint of understanding
No,
clearly.
I meant that in the sense of, so that when we have that next meeting, we're taking care of 2 things at the same time, the ranking, and then maybe we have time to solidify the question so that we don't have to wait another meeting. I'm just thinking.
The only thing is that is you haven't set any precedence on how you're going to conduct that interview. Because you don't know if it's 6 or 7, 8, you know, it's 2 questions, 1 question, 3 questions.
Understand.
Right.
And also, is it my understanding, once we hand those questions to the chairman, they're subject to the open meetings, right?
They're subject to it, and we
Open
can try
records
to
And that's
prolong
why,
it as much as possible.
And so then
keep it
they're
secret,
out.
yeah.
Say that again?
They're subject to open
Records.
records, but that is something we could try to prolong as long as possible, depending on when the interviews
When the
are.
interviews would be, so I'd like to also request that when you set your dates, you have consideration for the travel dates of 3 out-of-state candidates that we may have.
Well, and this is just personal privilege deal for our friends in the media. That when you make these requests, you may be eliminating candidates, or you may be, from what we're trying to do here. And I would hope that the media, this is just coming from Jerry Schwab, whether you agree with me or not, that you know, when we get these requests, that we ought clearly understand how we present that information out to the public and what we're trying to do here. And sometimes it can be detrimental to what our objective is. And I want to say that, just a personal opinion, because I think we've gone through these two requests, at least that I know of which we'll find out when we open the newspaper, or we open up, or we'll turn on the TV. We don't even know, then we're the ones that get the phone calls. So I just want to ask that particular, consideration that I've said on that. I know nobody else wants to apply, right?
We'll say.
Good, brave souls. Good deal. So we know what we have to do?
But I have a question, I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
So we're focusing on what questions are we going to ask during the interview process, but when is the scorecard going to be developed? And I think that's important, and it goes hand in hand with the questions that you're going to ask. So when are we going to develop this? Is there a template? Is there
So that's why
suggestions?
we came up with maybe 12 or 13
Yes.
categories. So if you choose one category, each one of you, or two, like if you both want environmental, for example, maybe you have 2 questions on environmental or whatever that is. And at least we know that we start narrowing down the questions, and those questions would be ranked from either 1 to 3, 1 to 5, 5 being the strongest response of whatever in that category. Yes.
I was just, Mr. Chairman, when we did the search for the Laredo College VP/provost, it was a large committee, and I remember the questions we submitted, it got compiled, and there was like a couple of pages of questions that every candidate got asked, and we just kind of went around the table, and Gene just didn't get to ask his question necessarily. It was question number 7 he asked, and then question 8 and 9. And next to each question, we ranked how well we thought they answered that. And I think, and then we ranked each candidate based on the strength of that interview, and presented our tallies of how well we thought they did in answering questions.
That's the process that
That's
staff
the
is
intent.
recommending.
That's a process we're
That's
recommending.
what we're recommending.
Okay. Nice. Yes. And then I think we should do our best to not give city council like a long list of finalists. Like, as I know Mr. Puig's been saying a lot, our job is to make their life easier as well, and they're trusting us to do all the homework and to give them these are our top 2, these are our top 3, and this is the final average score that each person got. So that way they don't have to do repeat all the work we've done, unless they want to, of course. But
No? Okay, so we're looking at a date for next week, possible dates. We had indicated, just for purposes of next week, which is the week of the 13th through the 17th. Yeah,
Mr. Chairman, I'm out the 16th and 17th.
I am as well.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think the staff would have enough time to compile the list on the 15th if we wanted to meet that evening.
Before we set that date, Mr. Chairman, could you remind me what date we set to make sure all of the scoring was?
let's set the 15th.
15th.
With the 15th, we may have to.
It would have to be after that date then, right, that we would meet?
Unless you change the 15th.
Or unless you change the date to the 13th.
Change the date to the 13th or the 14th.
How many days would you need, like?
We can do it in a couple of hours at most. We don't need a lot of time.
I mean, I just was looking to have the weekend to review, so I'm fine with the 13th or the 14th.
Would there be any consideration for a meeting on the 14th,
we have
the Tuesday?
we have our board meeting. I can't.
What time?
At 6:30.
6:30 in the evening? Okay, so it's a conflict.
We can also
Okay.
do a noon meeting if you all wish.
Pardon me?
We can also do a noon meeting, a noon.
I'm trying to look at times, yes, of course. Yeah.
So we're looking at maybe submitting on the 14th and meeting on the 15th?
Okay. Most everybody's in town.
No, actually, we're talking, well, that's what we want to look at. Yeah,
Yeah, let's submit on the,
but you say the 5th, Ms. Cortez,
She had a meeting the 14th.
she has a meeting the 14th, so
what about the 15th at noon?
that's fine, that works for me.
I'm available.
Availability of a meeting on the 15th at noon. Going once,
I'm in.
I'm good.
I guess
Good.
you need to hear from Ms. Cortez.
okay? So that is a that should be.
So we'd have to change the deadline for the.
To the 14th.
To the 14th.
To the 14th.
Tuesday the
Is it
14th.
like 5 o'clock, 14th?
Yes,
Or do you want it noon the 14th?
Noon would be
Noon the
better,
14th, okay.
okay.
in case we have stragglers.
Yeah, in case you have to do something,
Okay.
since we're having a noon meeting.
So you mean the 14th or the 15th?
No, it's to hand in our ranking. You've already
Oh,
handed yours
yeah.
in, so.
So, everything would be the rankings. Ms. Cortez, we're looking at, what about the meeting at noon on the 15th? That'll work for you? Great.
Can we have a motion for that?
So let's go ahead and entertain a motion for the next meeting of the
Mr. Chair, as
committee.
a point of order, we need to,
We need to bring back the prior motion,
Yeah,
which one?
the
The
one
date
where
for the ranking.
the
For the
ranking
ranking.
date,
The ranking date.
Submission of the rankings.
correct.
Okay, so then, if I can bring back that motion and amend it to reflect Tuesday, noon 14th.
Okay. Will the
Noon,
second accept
14th.
that? The second will
I accept that at noon.
Second has accepted that, so the motion is down for the date of submission by noon, the 14th of, any further discussion? If not, let's go ahead and vote on that particular motion. Yes, sir.
So we're talking about submitting
Rankings,
our rankings on the 14th
by noon.
by noon, and then meet the 15th at noon.
yes.
Correct. Correct.
You rescinded both of those things?
Well, the other one had-
Right now, the
we had-
motion is
we had-
just the
we had
rankings.
Made a motion
Right now,
on the
it's just
second
a
part,
motion on
just
the
the first
He's
part.
just amending his motion.
Okay, so call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Same sign? Okay.
Mr.
That
Chairman, as
motion
a point of order,
passes.
do we need to make a motion to table the two items that are before us, which is the discussion regarding the date selection for interviews and the ground rules, time certain, pending the meeting on the 15th?
And I'd like to see if we could also schedule dates for interviews. We don't know the candidates, but the dates.
We don't know how
Well, let's
many.
do that, let's do this meeting first.
Right.
We do this meeting first, because I think from the standpoint of, knowing what we're gonna be up against, then we can determine what dates we're gonna,
Do we
how
need
many-
one, do we need two? Right.
Okay, so if anything, we'd also at least like a 7 to 14-day lead time for travel if we're having anyone out of state, so that we can provide an ample, flight arrangements with them also.
Yeah.
And that's why I know I don't want to jump the gun. I'm just saying that's going to lead us into February and Washington's birthday celebrations, et cetera.
Yeah, and I go through this thing very often with other organizations. I don't know, I use, they call it doodle, where you look at, we all get a doodle and you submit what dates you're available,
Okay.
and everybody submits response. If everybody
Never
uses
used
that
it, no.
for
I
meetings,
haven't, but.
and in essence, they send you the calendar of X number of weeks, and which dates of that week you are available, which days you're not.
Mr. Chairman?
And then it matches.
Would it be possible that staff would give us a 2-week timeframe that they would feel interviews would work, and then just have everybody give their best
Preferred
3 days
dates,
and
preferred dates.
available in that
Anything
2
would
weeks?
work for us. We're available to you all.
Yeah.
We just want just a little bit of lead time
Yeah.
to book travels if necessary,
And
when you do your calendars.
Mr. Chairman, is it safe to even schedule anything in February?
No, if we don't have maybe the top,
Yeah.
you're right.
It's difficult to schedule anything right
Right.
now.
I would go into March, just an opinion.
Okay. We'll take our time.
Okay? So,
then a motion
I'm still waiting for a motion on,
To table both items, C and D. I'm sorry.
Second.
No.
Yeah.
Table,
No,
most-
not-
Right, right, with further discussion on the 15th.
A motion?
For a second?
I'll second it.
Caleb seconds that. Okay, any further discussion?
The meeting on the 15th, will we be discussing C or D or
Yes.
questions?
Yes.
That's the
We
motion.
will, no,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
And the last question I had is the interview dates. I think it would be realistic to do is pick Saturdays, right? I mean, if we're going to get everybody all at once.
Well, we'll just, I think we need to, you know, some have said that they don't have a problem with Saturdays, some have. So we just want to make sure that I would like for all the interviews to include all the committees. I would hope that the committee members are not be absent from any of the interviews.
Okay.
So we need to definitely work real hard on the calendars, maybe a weekday and a Saturday, maybe 2 weekdays, but we just need to keep ourselves open to keep that in mind. We're getting pretty much at the tail end of this process. You know, I commend both the consultants and staff for all this work, and you all as a committee for the time that you all devote to this, but we're getting close. We're getting closer, and the public needs to know that we're getting closer. But we have to make sure the process is adhered to.
I'd like to see that we do the interviews, whatever we do it all in the same day. I wouldn't want to spread it to 2 days.
I agree.
To say me that just so nothing leaks out or anything, and we're able to, you know what? It's just better, it's transparent, and I think we need to stick to that.
I agree.
Okay. So where are we on the motion?
Is there a motion and a second, sir?
Motion and second has been made. Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's right. Okay, so the next meeting is scheduled. Okay?
Reminding you all to bring your binders with you next time.
Binders.
Yes.
At noon, right?
All right. Is there anything else?
I do have, just wanted a clarification on one of the applicants. It states Norcross, Georgia as the city and state, but I believe, but yes, I believe it was LaPorte, not Norcross. I just wanted to make sure that.
What?
Might be a typo.
Yeah.
What number?
First applicant.
Okay.
I think the letter that the applicant put out was to Robert Slavin
Yes.
in Norcross, Georgia.
Yes.
But they put that as the bid location for Alexander.
Oh, I see.
We'll ask Mr. Slavin, and he would be present for the interviews also, but we'll ask that prior and provide that information to the entire committee.
Yeah, the question is the gentleman live
Where
in
is he?
Norcross or does he live?
I took that he was at
Where his
North
resume
Cross.
states.
Right, LaPorte. I thought he was at
I
LaPorte,
think we're the resume states.
because it says July 2012, present.
Thank you. Any other?
So he's looking at the
And he has a
chart.
chart, yes, and he has a Texas number.
What was this?
Yeah, I'm looking at that one. At the chart and our scoring says that he lives in,
The Norcross, Georgia is Mr. Slavin's address, right?
correct.
And your question is,
My question is on the scoring sheet that was given to us.
oh, we made a mistake.
And the sheet, that sheet, it states that the gentleman lives in,
Oh, okay.
on both of them, on the scoring sheet as well.
We'll correct that. We'll correct that.
Oh, that's, just wanted to make sure.
Right. Any other business?
No?
There being no business, time is what, 6:55? Thank you all very much. Adjourned. Thank you all.